The rate of natural increase, or the growth rate, is going to be determined by the number of individuals born each year minus the number of individuals that die every year. The net population growth. So if the number of births per year was 6 per 100 individuals and the number of deaths per year was 4 per 100 individuals, what would the growth rate be? Yeah, it'd be about 2%. 2 out of every 100 individuals, that's going to be your growth rate. The highest possible growth rate for a population is called its biotic potential. This is going to be, whether that biotic potential is high or low is going to depend on a number of limiting factors that reduce population's reproduction. So some of the limiting factors could include the number of offspring per reproductive event that can survive until the age of reproduction, the amount of competition within a population, the age and number of reproductive opportunities, or the presence of diseases and predators. So we're going to start to talk about mortality patterns. Population growth is measured by tracking a cohort, or the members of a population that were born at the same time. The mortality, or the number of deaths per capita, can be displayed in a life table like the one here. This is a life table for bluegrass. The cohort was originally made up of 843 individuals, but after 3 months, 121 had died, leaving us with a mortality rate of 0.14%. Another more cheerful way to look at this is to see that after 3 months, 722 individuals have survived, and we can plot this type of information on a survivorship curve. So one of the interesting things about a life table is that it includes not just how many are alive after a given amount of time, but it also indicates the average number of seeds put out. So although we still have 722 that still survived through this first 3 months, none of those put out any seeds. So then in the next segment of time, the next 3 months, out of the 722, we only 195 died, so our mortality rate has gone up, but the number of seeds has also gone up. And we'll see that continue, that the mortality rate is going to continue each year, but the number of seeds produced is also going to continue for a little while before it starts to decline. So life tables show how many members of a cohort are still alive after a given interval of time. A survivorship curve can also help us plot this chart. So this is another way of looking at the mortality of a species. Survivorship is the probability that newborn individuals of a cohort will survive to any particular age. And we can chart this progress on a survivorship curve. This is a plot of the number of organisms surviving at each age, and each species tends to fit one of 3 typical survivorship curves. Those types are named 1, 2, and 3. So in a type 1 survivorship curve, the characteristic of this population is that most individuals are going to survive past the midpoint of their life, meaning that death typically does not come until the end of the lifespan, or in other words, most individuals are going to die of old age. Typically, we're going to see this in large mammals and humans in well-developed countries. Type 2 is linear. Death is going to be completely unrelated to age, meaning that the odds that you're going to survive to year 1 or year 2 or year 3 are just as good as you surviving to the end of your life, or not at all. We're going to tend to see this in songbirds and small mammals. In other words, areas where there's incredibly high predation. Individuals are, able to survive, but there's a good chance that they could get picked off. And then there's going to be type 3. Type 3 is where most of the individuals are going to die very, very young. Most do not make it to the first round of reproduction. This is going to be really common in invertebrates, insects, fishes. Most plants are going to fall into this category. I mean, if you just think about it, how many of you have trees in your yard that drop, hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of those little helicopter seeds in your backyard? Lots. I mean, I don't know about you, but my yard is completely full of them. I'll bet you my tree devotes time and energy to dropping about 100,000 offspring every single year. Do you know how many of those are going to survive to full treehood? Almost none. Very few are going to actually become a tree. Most of those are going to die off in the seedling stage or never even make it. So we're going to see this type 3 a lot for plants. Grasses, dandelions, the vast majority of dandelion seeds just get blown around. They do not get to become full dandelions, blowing around more seeds. So those are the 3 types of survivorship curves. So the proportion of a population that falls within a certain age category is going to be known as the age distribution. There are going to be 3 major groups: the pre-reproductive stage, the reproductive stage, and the post-reproductive stage. Basically, all of life can be summed up into those 3 categories. Populations are going to differ according to what proportion of the population falls into each age group. So for example, if the population is increasing in size, we're going to see that the pre-reproductive stage is going to be the largest. Lots and lots of young individuals, lots of children coming up. That means we're going to have, as they enter the reproductive stage, we're going to see a huge population boom, and then we're going to see a lot of individuals in a post-reproductive stage. In a stable population, where we're not really increasing too much, we're going to see much more equal distribution between the reproductive and pre-reproductive stage. In a decreasing population, we're going to see that the reproductive stage is actually quite small, which leads to an even smaller pre-reproductive stage, even smaller offspring, and we have a very large generation or a very, very large population in the post-reproductive stage. We're going to skip this slide. It is very interesting. It goes over 2 patterns for population growth, whether individuals are semiparity, meaning that they'll have a single reproductive event in their lifetime. Great example of this would be insects. A lot of insects only reproduce once, but they tend to reproduce massive quantities of offspring all at once. This is really fantastic for an unstable environment. Kind of just wait until conditions are right, drop all your offspring at once, and be done with it. Heteroparity, there's going to be multiple reproductive events throughout the lifetime. Most vertebrates, shrubs, trees, plants, this is for very stable environments. You know the environment is not going to change drastically from year to year, so you can afford to have multiple reproductive events throughout the course of your lifetime. So the next thing that we're going to talk about when studying a species, we're often going to see a period of growth. And so we're going to look at 2 different population growth models, starting off with exponential growth. So we're going to take a look at insects that reproduce only once in their lifetimes. This area of exponential growth is going to be a period of very, very rapid growth. Fantastic example of this would be insects. So for example here, each female is going to produce an average of 4.8 eggs per generation, half of which will become female, who will then go on to produce 4.5 eggs. So that means if the initial generation has a population of 5 individuals, so we started off with 5 females, it means that by the next cycle we're going to have 12 females. The cycle after that will have 30, then 62, then 82, then 165, then 3,000, then 9,000, then 22,000, then 55,000, then 132,000. We are going to see the number of individuals is going to increase rapidly due to the total number of reproductive individuals increasing. So this is what that growth is going to look like on a graph. We have an initial lag phase. So that phase right in here where the population doesn't grow very much, very fast. And this is because the population size is small. 5 cannot become, 3 million overnight. It's going to take a little while. 5 become 12, 12 become 30, 30 becomes 60, 60 become 180. It's going to take a little while. So growth is slow because the population is small. However, then we hit it. We hit our exponential growth phase where the growth is going to be accelerating super rapidly. So rapid exponential growth, we're going to reach the biotic potential. Biotic potential is having the full effect and the birth rate is at an absolute max. Here's the thing. In reality, environmental conditions tend to prevent exponential growth for long term. Eventually, limiting factors are going to prevent further growth. At some point, waste is going to build up. Resources are going to become scarce. Competition is going to become fierce. If we have a very, very large population in a given area, predation is going to increase. It's going to attract a large number of predators to that area as well. So long-term exponential growth just does not happen. What we tend to see instead is logistic growth. Logistic growth is when this occurs when there are limiting environmental factors that oppose growth. And there are going to be a couple of different phases for the logistic growth curve. There's going to be the lag phase where growth is slow because the population is so small. Then, just like before, we're going to hit our exponential growth phase. Growth is going to be exponential. We're going to be accelerating really fast. We're going to see huge numbers increasing all at once. At some point, though, that's going to slow down. We're not going to be reproducing quite as quick as we were before. Food is going to become a little bit scarce. That exponential rate, we're still increasing. The population is still growing in size, but we're not growing quite as fast as we used to. And then we're going to see the stable equilibrium phase, where there's not going to be a whole lot of growth. We're going to see that the environment is supporting pretty much all that it can. So at this point, births and deaths are going to be about equal. So here's a model for that logistic growth. What we're going to see if we tried to grow yeast cells in a laboratory culture, we're going to see that initially the population is going to be small because it's going to take some time. After 2 hours, 9 cells have become 30 cells. Okay, that's not bad. After another 2 hours, those 30 cells have become 70 cells. After another 2 hours, the 70 has become 174. We're starting to see that population is starting to pick up pretty quickly. However, at some point, we're going to start to run out of nutrients. Waste is going to build up in that yeast culture, and it's going to start to slow down. And we're going to eventually hit a stable equilibrium phase where pretty much, as you know, there are as many births as there are deaths, or as many new cells as there are old cells being killed off. When we have reached the stable equilibrium phase, we say that we have reached the carrying capacity. The carrying capacity is the maximum number of individuals of a given species that the community can support. The closer a population size nears the carrying capacity at the end of the community, the more likely its resources will become scarce and that biotic effects like competition and predation will become evident. If you want to control population, the best thing you can do is not to limit population size, but limit carrying capacity. If I wanted to limit the number of mosquitoes in my backyard, would it be beneficial for me to go outside and start just killing off mosquitoes right, left, and center? No, because if I'm standing out there and me as one human being in my backyard can support 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour can come and feed off of me. If I just keep killing mosquitoes, that's nothing. All I'm doing is limiting competition and staying out there for the mosquitoes to just thrive off of. But if I were to go inside, suddenly there's no food source for those mosquitoes. Suddenly the carrying capacity for my backyard has dropped from 1,000 mosquitoes to, 5 mosquitoes. So if I want to limit the number of mosquitoes in my backyard, I need to do things like reduce the carrying capacity, take away their resources. Maybe what I need to do is put out citronella candles that are going to prevent them from coming in the yard in the first place. Like, sure, there's food there, but they've got to get past the candles that they don't like. Or maybe I get rid of the bucket full of standing water where they have been laying all of their eggs. If I get rid of the standing water, suddenly my backyard can't support as many mosquitoes. So if you want to eliminate a population, don't go for, if I have let's say I have a problem with pests. I have a problem with mice in my house. Setting out traps for mice is not going to be nearly as effective. Killing off mice one by one individually is not going to be nearly as effective as making sure there is no food around, making sure that all of the holes are stopped up so mice can't get in the first place, making sure that my house has the lowest carrying capacity and is the most inhospitable house for mice to begin with, because that is ultimately what's going to keep mice out of my house. If I leave my doors and windows open and I leave food open in my pantry or sprinkled all over my floor and I just shoot every mouse that comes in the front door, I'm not really going to control the mouse population. Not very well. So when you're worrying about or thinking about pest control, think about carrying capacity and the ways that you can reduce the number of pests that your home can support or provide. Find ways to reduce the carrying capacity and you can reduce the pest population.